world's attention on it that maybe some light might come out of it, that now the world can see what it's been looking at for many years. And of course that was futile hope. We're actually worse than ever now insofar as the world can see and are choosing to do nothing. Anyway, I've penciled a few things here. I recently got a chance to see a really wonderful retrospective exhibition in Dusseldorf of the painter Marc Chagall, regarded as one of the great 20th century artists and probably the greatest Jewish painter. And in fact, some of his paintings in that exhibition were donated by the Modern Museum of Art in Tel Aviv. And some of his works could be straight out of Fiddler on the Roof. Beautiful paintings, and one of them that struck me was a painting of a synagogue that he painted, and it was inscribed Palestine in 1941. And I thought it was remarkable in some ways, where I listen now to people who tell me Palestine didn't exist, and here's one of their great own acknowledging that and paying, I suppose, some kind of well, in retrospect, some acknowledgement of its own existence, even, which is kind of madness. And I know I'm speaking here to a lot of the people who know a lot of the stuff, are the converted, as my wife would say. That's, a little 7 years later after he painted that painting, the Nakba in 1948 happened, displacing over 750,000 people. And I know we think of those kind of numbers, and in some ways they're just numbers for all towns and villages. I just thought if we could put that kind of cold statistic into some kind of clarity, 750,000 people plundered, evicted and moved to a new land. That is the equivalent today of all of Waterford, the county, Tramore, Dungarvan, Lismore, all of Waterford City, all of County Kilkenny, everybody in Thurles, every child, every woman, every man in Tipperary, all of County Clare, everybody, all of Wexford, Ennis, forced to move from their homes, and most of Laois, Waterford, Kilkenny, Wexford, Tipperary, Clare and Laois. Imagine all of those people now being moved from their homes. That's what happens. It's not just a number. And since then, over 500 Palestinian towns and villages have been removed, knocked and built over. Tel Aviv is built on the ruins of 4 Palestinian villages. In fact, Palestine people surpassed Ireland as the country with the most displaced people around the world since. And of course, it could be argued that people didn't know. I remember in the late 70s with the kibbutz, and it was nearly seen as a kind of cool hippie thing to go to Israel and help build what I suppose could have been spoken about as a kind of an oasis in the desert. Recently there was a wonderful Palestinian artist called Manal Mahid. She showed her work at MoMA Gallery here in 2024, and she visited with her aunt, whose grandmother was one of those evicted from her house and land in 1948. One of her kind of symbols in her work is this Palestinian gazelle, and the gazelle is now become nearly a symbol of the Palestinian freedom. And one in particular she painted was in a zoo in Palestine, and it had lost a leg. It was a 3-legged gazelle, and so this became a kind of Palestinian symbol. When you think of the largest number of children ever in modern history have now lost limbs, and so this gazelle became a symbol for her art. And she told me that it's in danger now because a lot of the indigenous plants, the indigenous trees, the indigenous landscape that those indigenous gazelles lived on are now being erased to build some kind of a European oasis. And in the local zoo, the Palestinian gazelle is now being translated into Hebrew to the Israeli gazelle, trying to eliminate a kind of culture. I mean, imagine that in Ireland, if it was was Ireland that they had in this jail, and we're now talking about the Israeli wolfhound. It's just farcical but tragic. In 2003, I had a great opportunity to direct a wonderful play by Martin Sherman, a Jewish writer. The play was called Rose, with a one-woman show with the wonderful actor Fiona York. And Fiona toured that play for nearly 15 years, all around the world. Here in Waterford, obviously, in Dublin, around Ireland, in Australia, South Africa, France. And it tells the story of a Jewish woman who was just 18 years old, and she's sitting what's called Shiva, where is mourning for the death, and really it reflects on her life. It tells the story of how she grew up in a village that is now in Ukraine till the Cossacks came, and then moved to Warsaw until the Nazis came and was in the Nazi ghetto. And the long story short of that wonderful play is that she was sitting Shiva, just sitting mourning on a bench for a week, and we kind of hear her story throughout it, and realise toward the end of the play that she's mourning the death of a young Palestinian 9-year-old girl killed by her own grandson. And wrote a speech of the Jewish people speaking Yiddish transforming to the Israeli settlers now in Palestine, and what was done to them in some ways a repeat of what was done to them as Jews in the Holocaust. And she has that line in Martin Sherman's line, "Not for this, not for this." And Martin Sherman wrote this play in 1999, over 25 years ago. What would he say now? And I think, of course, we didn't know the extent of the devastation. We didn't really know the truth, because our information really came from the news media, nearly always them rarely telling the true story. The newspapers, the radio, the television. All of us, I think, growing up, would have trusted the BBC and even the RTE and the newspapers to tell us the truth. I mean, I visited Jerusalem in the mid-90s. I got a tour by an Israeli guide, and largely unaware of the true nature of the plight of Palestinians. But somehow social media has changed that. In 2018, when Israel bombed the Sayed al-Mashal Theatre in Gaza City, it was through friends of a friend that I heard the full truth. Theatre friends of waterman Andy Cummins, who had met some of the Palestinian actors through exchanges made through the Calfest Festival. And through them, we could hear the full kind of truth of what was going on, and began to understand that the truth was not being reported equally. It was suppressed or distorted, and as that brilliant, great British journalist Gary Lineker said in a recent BBC interview, it was raining outside and we can all see the rain. Why give the airtime to those who would tell you that it's not raining, because their opinion is as valid? Just report the truth. In time, I would hope to see that those peddling those false narratives are held accountable for their enabling of this genocide. And what are we to do? I know I've been online tormenting myself, preaching to the converted most nights, putting up posts that have no avail. I painted paintings about those baby brothers that were bombed in Gaza. So, relatively recently, I infiltrated a few Israeli pages where you couldn't leave a comment unless you were in the community for a few days. So most nights now I engage in a kind of an argument with Israeli supporters from all over the world. Sites parading beautiful girls of the IDF, sites about the sporting abilities of Israeli athletes, tourist sites showing the beauty of Israel. And I tell them to educate themselves that Israel is a stain on Judaism and the Jewish faith, a stain on Jerusalem, a stain on the Middle East. And I tell them that Israel is committing a genocide on stolen land, murdering doctors, journalists and their families, bombing hospitals and schools. Tell them that Israel is a parasite, stealing homes and land for over 77 years and still at it today on the West Bank and Gaza, starving a whole population. Israeli citizens blocking aid trucks bringing food to starving civilians. And now this week we hear that the IDF have been ordered to shoot and kill unarmed civilians queuing for food. That food that has just now been let through the blockade. When will it be enough for our governments to stop this? There has been over 300 UN resolutions against Israel since 1948 with no repercussions. In 1983, the UN called on all nations, Resolution 38180, to suspend or sever all diplomatic, economic and technological ties with Israel, condemn them for the occupation of the West Bank, Gaza and the Golan Heights, and the war in Lebanon, and the annexation of Jerusalem. That should have been enough. In 2014, when Israel bombed and killed 4 boys playing football on the beach in Gaza, the Baker brothers, 2H10, 1H11, 19, that should have been enough. In 2018, the Great March of Return at the Gaza border, Israel killed 223, including 48 children. That should have been enough. When Israel targeted killed over 178 journalists, and to put that in context, in the whole of World War II, 67 journalists were killed. That should have been enough. When Israel bombed every hospital in Gaza, every school, that should have been enough. And now, as 377,000 people, think about that, 377,000, that's Croke Park filled 470 times. They've gone missing in Gaza since October 23. This is enough. But so, as Salman Rushdie said, a poem cannot stop a bullet, a novel can't defend a bomb, defuse a bomb. But we're not helpless. We can sing the truth and name the liars. And there's real cruelty as Israel kills the storytellers. I'm going to leave you with this, a poem by the writer, Professor Dr. Rafat Al-Nir, killed in the airstrikes along with his brother's son, his sister, and her 3 children. If I must die, you must live, to tell my story, to sell my things, to buy a piece of cloth and some strings, make it white with a long tail, so that a child somewhere in Gaza, while looking heaven in the eye, waiting his dad to let it blaze, and bid no one farewell, not even to his flesh, sees the kite, my kite you made, flying up above, and thinks for a moment that angels they are bringing back. If I must die, let it bring hope, let it be a story. Free Palestine.
Good morning.
How are you? That's our boat. They're all on Hollybox.
How are you?
I know. How are you?
Brilliant.